Online piracy and copyright laws are topics that have sparked intense debate and controversy in recent years. On one hand, there are those who argue that online piracy is a serious crime that undermines the rights of content creators and leads to significant financial losses. On the other hand, there are those who claim that copyright laws are outdated and overly restrictive, impeding innovation and limiting access to information. The argument against online piracy focuses on the importance of protecting intellectual property rights and ensuring that content creators are fairly compensated better. Proponents of stronger copyright laws argue that piracy not only results in lost revenue for artists, musicians, and other creators, but also discourages originality and creativity. They contend that without effective copyright laws, there would be little incentive for artists to produce new works, ultimately stifling cultural progress, depriving society of valuable contributions. On the contrary, proponents of looser copyright laws and a more permissive approach to online piracy argue that the current system is flawed and fails to adapt to the digital age. They point out that copyright laws were originally designed for a different era, with physical copies of media that were easy to regulate and control. In the digital age, they claim that attempting to enforce strict copyright laws only leads to an endless game of cat and mouse, as pirates find new ways to circumvent restrictions and share copyrighted content. Furthermore, advocates for greater freedom and access in copyrighted material argue that it allows for greater democratic participation and fosters a culture of share and collaboration. They emphasize the importance of open access to information, rejecting the notion that knowledge and culture should be commodified and restricted by copyright laws. From their perspective, online piracy can even be seen as a form of civil disobedience, challenging the current power structures and advocating for a more inclusive and equitable system. Critics argue that the real issue lies not in piracy itself, but rather in the inability of the entertainment industry to adapt to changing consumer demands. They believe that instead of focusing on punitive measures and restrictive laws, there should be a shift towards embracing innovative business models that can coexist with the digital landscape. They point to successful examples of streaming services like Netflix and Spotify, which have provided convenient and affordable alternatives to piracy. By making content easily accessible and competitively priced, these platforms have effectively reduced piracy rates in some instances. However, opponents argue that relying solely on market solutions is not enough, as piracy still poses significant challenges to content creators, particularly in industries where profit margins are already slim. They claim that piracy not only affects large conglomerates, but also independent artists and small businesses who rely on every sale and download to sustain their work. As the debate rages on, policymakers and lawmakers worldwide grapple with finding the right balance between protecting intellectual property and promoting innovation and access to information. Some countries have adopted stricter copyright laws and implemented measures to combat piracy, while others have taken a more lenient approach, prioritizing freedom, expression, and access to knowledge. In conclusion, the controversy surrounding online piracy and copyright laws is unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. The issue touches upon complex questions of ethics, economics, and social norms. Striking the right balance between protecting intellectual property and promoting creativity and access to information remains a considerable challenge. It is evident that both sides of the debate have valid arguments, and any potential solution must carefully consider the interests of content creators, consumers. One problem